But right now we are joined by a video link by the Secretary of the Women's Rights Party, a brand new political party, which I understand, following the appearance of this person on our show last week, has now reached the 500 required signed and paid up members to be a political party. And Jill Ovens is a former Labour Party council member and unionist who has formed the Women's Rights Party kind of in response to some of the stuff she sees wrong inside Labour, and she is refreshing enough to say that she has no intention, or she doesn't think the Women's Rights Party will get a seat. Probably more appealing to many people than Liz Gunn's party, which is also going for 500 members, but doesn't seem to be doing so well. Jill, welcome to the platform again. Lovely to have you with us. So you got your 500 members.
Yes, thanks to you and the platform.
Really?
It was amazing because even as we were talking on the interview, people were sending in their applications, paying their $5 and becoming members of the party. By the end of that day, we sort of gave up when 70 members joined up on one day and processed them the following day. So it's continued since then. So,
well, you know me, I've always been regarded as an absolute women's rights activist and feminist. Well, that's life. That's the power of our audience. We have an engaged group of people listening who I think are original thinkers and see the world perhaps outside the normal box. But look, the reason I really wanted to talk, I was interesting to see the party issue a media statement, a press release, and you mentioned you're having a hard time in mainstream or legacy media getting any coverage. But it was concerning an issue that we had discussed and looked at here on the platform, and that is a rather strange piece of, and I use the term in its broadest possible sense, journalism from, what's it called, TV3, News Hub, whatever, the Paddy Gower, the appropriately named Paddy Gower Has Issues program on, well, transgenderism. And it seemed to me that your party, the Women's Rights Party, had some criticisms to make of that program. I was interested in what they were or what they are.
Yeah, so we took issue with a number of the issues that he raised. He was really unclear in his definitions. So he finished up by conflating intersex with transgenderism, and they're not the same thing. Intersex, which is sometimes called differences of sex, DSD, is actually a medical condition. Yeah. It's quite rare. It only affects 0.018% of the population. Yeah. And it's a medical condition. It's not how you feel. It is actually.
Yeah, and and it can include things like chromosomal abnormalities.
That's right.
Pretty difficult to treat and quite difficult for the people who suffer from it.
Exactly right. And many of these are picked up at the birth, and the babies undergo chromosomal investigations.
Okay, so he confuses those two things, not the greatest sin in the world. What else was wrong with it?
Well, he confused sex and gender. For example, he suggested that lesbians and gay men are attracted to same gender. No, they're not. They're attracted to same sex. If you say that, what happens is that trans women, that is men who identify as women, can say they're lesbians. No, they can't. It's same sex. So that's another thing that we took issue with. Yeah, so the other thing is the whole thing about gender being about sex stereotypes. And of course, we reject sex stereotypes. We think that children who are non-conforming, tomboys, in the case of girls, they should be supported. You don't try and change them to be a boy just because they want to play with the boys and climb trees. Because
it would seem to me that we have a debate now, is genital mutilation the correct response, sometimes state-funded genital mutilation or hormone therapy, the correct response to gender dysphoria?
Exactly right. Internationally, it's being rejected as the front line of treating gender dysphoria. It's much better to look at the whole of the individual who's presenting with issues, especially in adolescence when kids do get confused. There's a lot of hormones raging, and that's normal. It's supposed to happen in that age group.
Yeah, they'd be someone who didn't have some angst in their puberty, going through puberty and growing up. I don't know a single person, if you really look them in the eye, wouldn't say they felt uncomfortable or had doubts as they sort of, moved towards adulthood.
What really concerns us, though, is that there's been an exponential increase in the number of girls wanting to transition to boys. Historically, that wasn't the case. It was the other way round. And it's really disturbing. Why do young girls not want to grow up to be women?
All right. And that is, it's like it's a trend or it's trendy, isn't it? Isn't it, Jill?
Yes, well, we have had with adolescent girls, anorexia, bulimia, cutting, and I think that these issues need to be treated as mental health issues. And definitely, I'm reading last year, Radio New Zealand did an interview with Dr. Sue Bagshaw from Christchurch, and she was saying, when kids present, adolescents present, you have to do something. You have to give them a prescription. No, you don't. You can engage mental health, psychologists and psychotherapists to have a look at what else is going on in their lives.
Yeah, I absolutely get you on that, Jill. Jill, Paddy also promised us a conversation, and then they promptly turned off all the social media comments. Do you think it was a one-sided affair?
Well, it definitely was, but I do understand he tried to get hold of some parents of kids. They did actually interview some parents of young people who had gone through gender transition, because it's not a fun thing. It can actually make things a lot worse.
Also, they represented and they made a number of disparaging comments about Posey Parker and and they represented that the hate in this debate comes from those who are not all rainbow LGBTQIA loved up. Do you think that was fair?
No, definitely not. I mean, none of us hate. We don't hate people who are transgender. We particularly, if you're an adult, you want to wear a dress, you want to appear as a woman, that's fine.
Knock yourself out.
What we are talking about is pro-women's rights. So we don't want the rights that we've got, sex-based rights in law to single-sex spaces, for example, to be trampled on. And these were hard fought for.
Yeah.
And we don't want the erasure of women from our health services in particular, because we think there's a lack of priority on women's health.
Jill, have you been offered any right of reply or had any formal response from TV3, from the producers of Paddy Has Issues?
No, our press release was ignored as usual. It was carried on, the daily blog, and got quite positive comments. Yeah.
But otherwise, mainstream media are literally shutting you out. You don't exist, right?
No, the only time was last week. I got called by a staff journalist in Tauranga after the Tauranga Council cancelled a meeting where some people, I don't know who, were going to show Matt Walsh's What is a Woman.
Actually, it's interesting you brought that up. We are going to talk, and there's possible legal action over that. A guy called Matt Walsh, he's very popular on the internet, and I think the LGBTQIA whatever movement would describe him as a leading TERF, though the term is not a term I would use. Matt Walsh made a movie called What is a Woman? I haven't seen it. Have you seen it, Jill?
I didn't see it till after I got interviewed by the person on staff.
Is it any good? Is it worth a watch? Is it worth a watch?
Look, you wouldn't believe the academic that they talk to, a man who's an expert in women's studies, gender studies.
Yeah.
He couldn't articulate anything. He was really hopeless and got really rude. And the only one that's any good on it is a psychotherapist.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but it was funny with stuff because the reporter started out...
Is it a movie you consider damaging or controversial, or is it going to challenge people? Is it going to damage anyone if they saw it? Or is it a exercise in examining an issue from a perspective?
It exposes the arguments of people who would argue that that it's okay to trans children.
Okay. Could I ask you, in your opinion, then, is the What Is a Woman movie better journalism than Paddy Gower Has Issues?
Oh, that's a bit unfair.
Oh, come on.
because what I would like to challenge Paddy Gower to do is to actually bring on those interviews with the parents and also talk to some of these kids who are detransitioning, because that's what caused
it wasn't balanced. But what's happened with that movie with Matt Walsh's Tauranga City Council has banned it from public events, and I think the Free Speech Union is considering legal action against the Tauranga Council. Because it's a breach.
So the council's strategy was to say, because we've had all these complaints from the rainbow community, we have to increase the amount of security, and they made it so impossible that's what Massey University did as well, and that's what they tried to do with Molyneux and Southern. And Massey University used it as a threat to staff. And interestingly enough, and I would be interested in your comment on this, the lawyer who spearheaded that strategy for university to shut down a Speak Up for Women event, her name was Linda Clark, former journalist and long-time supporter of the Labour Party. She's just been appointed to the board of Television New Zealand. She's also the one going through all the Radio New Zealand stories, looking for all the corruption that happened. I was going to say with that staff journalist is that when she rang me up, she said, I have to get some balance. So you need some comment. So obviously that's a response to the media complaint where staff was accused of not providing balance. Yeah, well, they pulled the same trick on me last week on another matter. Jill, I'm glad that you have got to your registration and you can be a truly effective protest party with no chance of getting into Parliament. Do you think you will ever be recognised in the mainstream? Well, we got into that stuff article. That was a little chink. Yeah. I think once we get registered, that may change things. And if we get, up to 1,000 people joining, maybe then they'll take notice. I don't know. There is definitely a strategy to keep deplatform. It's called deplatforming. Yeah, that's why we're called the platform. Right. Jill, I thank you very much. And look, what would you say to Paddy Gower? Would you like Paddy to have another crack at the trans issue? Yeah, that's what I would prefer. I think so. Yeah. I think that would be a good idea because we need to look at some detransitioners. It's really disturbing that these kids are put on this track. And it's a lifelong thing having these cross-sex hormones because 98% of those kids that start on puberty blockers end up having to take cross-sex hormones for the rest of their life. Yeah, it's just crazy. It is crazy. Jill, I thank you very much again for your time, and I'm glad to, as I said, you've had some success following the platform bump last week. That is Jill Ovens. And I thank you for that. You're more than welcome. Jill Ovens is the General Secretary of, I presume, the now registered Women's Rights Party of New Zealand. And Jill, by way of background, is an old unionist and a member of of Labour's ruling council, who told us in our first interview with her she simply felt that she'd been excluded because there's an increasingly identitarian and cliquish little cabal of people running the Labour Party.